What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about what's next for Bluepoint and Bend, right? We got the news about those canceled games, did a whole video on that, and it actually has been talked about by Jeff Grubb later on that it really is the Concord effect, right? Concord scared PlayStation. I would say rightly so, even though it shouldn't have been Concord that had to do it. And PlayStation, after Concord's failure, basically went studio to studio and was looking out for these type of things. And when they saw something they didn't like, these things get shuttered. So, that's one thing, and we kind of already talked about that, so I'll leave it alone for now. Again, I think Concord shouldn't have had to be the final straw. They should have been able to do it beforehand, but whatever. Okay, let's be a little optimistic, because I was quite fiery, I was quite heated in the video where I just kind of got mad at the whole situation. What about the future? What do these companies do next? Well, it pains me to say, and I said it back then, this is probably a multi-year process, right? That's the sad thing and the negative of wasting so much time, wasting so much money and resources on these games is, thank God they're not shut down. Okay, that's a huge positive, but you're not going to get the next game from them. I would say 3 years if you're praying to every god in the book, right? Like, if you believe in them all, you're going to get in 3 years. But honestly, most likely 4 or 5. It's really, I think, going to take a while for these games to come out. So let's start with Bluepoint, because I do think their game can come out faster. And I really have one specific thing. I actually name dropped it in the last video, but I want to kind of go more in depth. I really think you should be talking to them about Bloodborne, and you should really be figuring this stuff out. Again, it would be a touchy subject, right? It's not coming from Software. It's not coming from the original minds. But this is accomplishing a couple different things all at one time, right? Number one, you're going back to something that is reliable and something that they're good at. Now, the issue is we don't know how much these studios have transformed in the last 2 to 5 years, right? So when I talk about Bluepoint, I talk about Demon Souls and then Shadow of the Colossus and Uncharted and their roots of being extremely good remaster remake studios. Now, I was never against the idea of them doing their own property, like a brand new thing, but at the end of the day, we saw what they were good at, and if they just stuck with that forever, would people be all that disappointed? Maybe not. So in one way, okay, you put them on a remake, right? You could actually say any remake. I mean, Sly Cooper, of course, would be something that my biasness would say. Any of the old games of Jak and Daxter, but I think Bloodborne makes sense for probably some obvious reasons, right? It goes back to something they're good at and they've done before. It goes back to something that people are actually legitimately wanting and would have pretty good, you could predict that the thing is going to do well, right? I can talk here all day and night about Sly, but you don't know how that end product is going to be. You don't know if it would actually end up selling, hence why maybe it's been an issue. But Bloodborne, if you did a remake or a remaster of Bloodborne, you would be able to sell that thing. It would make a legitimate amount of money. And to that Shuhei Yoshida, interview thing, you would make money off a small investment, right? You wouldn't be putting a lot of money in, but you'd be making a lot of money in return. So all of those things, right? Going back to something familiar, going back to remakes, going to Bloodborne, a fan favorite. I would also say time, right? Time, when I talk about 3, 4, 5 years, probably 5 years if you're making a thing from scratch, right? But what if you just remaster Bloodborne? I mean, does that take more than a year or two? Probably not. Even remaking Bloodborne probably doesn't take more than 2-3 years, right? So I think if you want these studios, and I want to throw it out because it is, I would say, when they're talking, when PlayStation or Sony is talking to these companies, you got to imagine one of my frustrations that I said in the last video. By the end of the day, these studios aren't going to have things that come out for 8, 9, 10 years. And when you have 2 of them that are doing it, that's pathetic. That's really, really bad. You are sinking endless amounts of money. You're paying for these studios to be alive for an entire decade with nothing, no new game. And that's terrible. That is legitimately awful, right? Imagine all the money lost. I mean, okay, again, all those things are obvious. Well, I do have to imagine that there is part of the discussion where you bring something like that up and you say, okay, look, we got to balance that creative freedom, right? Doing something that you want to do and all this stuff. We got to balance everything, but at the same time, we need a game out quick. We would love to get some money from your studio that we keep supporting for literally nothing in return. So I have to imagine that comes up, and I think that's how you potentially can get Bloodborne. And I guess one final, again, probably obvious thing is their last remake was literally Demon Souls. It's the starting point of it all. So I feel like, and again, it goes back to, well, who's there now, right? Because you could say, okay, well, they've had good practice. When you do a remake of these things, when Crash Bandicoot was remastered, right, kind of remaster remake, that was like a test run to see if they could do it and to see how comfortable they were. And then what did they do after that? They made a Crash 4. They made a brand new game. And that happens quite often, right? Remakes can basically be test runs for almost like the mechanics and the culture of that game. So they've proven that. They did a Demon's Souls remake and they did it well. Now, again, in the last 5 years, they were making a God of War live service game. Are those people qualified to now backtrack to doing a remake, say, of Demon's Souls and then now do a Bloodborne thing? Are they good at that? Because, and I'm not saying like talent level is a problem. I'm saying they literally might just have people that specialize in other things because they kind of pivoted, right? Wrongly so, by the way. So in my opinion, that's what I would do. I mean, look, would I prefer, again, them to make like their own thing or focus on kind of the more obscure ones? I mean, like I'm talking about Gravity Rush a lot in other videos. Like, could you make a new spin-off type Gravity Rush thing? Or could you, remake a Jak and Daxter or Sly or Killzone or Resistance? Like, there's things that I want more than a Bloodborne remake, but I just feel, my biasness aside, you got to focus on, I think, what works. You got to focus on their experience, the speed of it all, right? I think those things kind of line up. So that's what I would do personally with Bluepoint if I was in charge, and trying to make sure everybody's feeling comfortable with the situation. Now, in terms of Bend, this one's more tough, okay? I thought about this a little bit, and I'm going to throw an idea out there that I don't know if it would work. I don't know if people would like it, but I'm going to say one word. I'm going to say Uncharted. And so here's the situation, right? Days Gone 2 is probably the one that, if I was in charge and I had a lot of power and a lot to say, I would probably push them to do a Days Gone 2, okay? Because they have your open world, when you want to do these open world Spider-Man, God of War is becoming bigger and bigger. When you do Horizon, all this jazz, Days Gone fits in pretty well. So I would personally double down on Days Gone and do a Days Gone 2. You can also say they're doing a movie on it. Actually, the more I talk about it, the more I think, like, Days Gone is kind of the dream, okay? Because I thought, and I've said this a long time, I've thought that the first game had immense potential. It is not an amazing game. It's not a terrible game. It's a game that does a couple things really well, and it's got a lot of potential. That's a prime candidate where the first game is fine, it's good, it's okay, it's what, and then the next game just jumps to the stars, right? And honestly, like, a lot of these games had to do that. Infamous 2, I think, is miles better than Infamous 1. Uncharted 2 is not even the same level as Uncharted 1. You sometimes have to give these games room to, like, actually try and then not do amazing but have potential and then make the next game. You have to allow that, and we aren't allowed that anymore in the gaming industry, which really actually hurts. So Days Gone is, let's say it's the honorable mention, okay? It's one that I think does work for a variety of reasons. They always seem very opposed. You have the John Garvin thing. You have, the background kind of stuff with the creatives of it. Maybe they just factually do not want to make it, and Sony will not make them do something that they're uncomfortable with. Whatever. Now, the thing with Uncharted, though, right, is that I'm actually going back further. I'm going into the history of Ben because they did Uncharted Golden Abyss, but that was a Vita game. You could do something where you reimagine it for, like, a system. I guess the Vita, like an actual, like, home console, right, not a handheld. So you could do something like that. That would actually be quite interesting. Or here's the thing, right? So we know from, the past and the leaks and stuff, and I think Jason Schreier specifically, that at some point Bend was a support team on an Uncharted, I think an Uncharted 1 remake, right? But they didn't like doing it. And PlayStation basically had them, gave them the offer where it's like, okay, do you really want to keep doing like a support thing? Because they, I think, pushed them in that direction in the first place. Do you want to keep doing this, or do you want to do your own thing? And Ben said we want to do our own thing. Okay, at this point, and look, it's not necessarily blaming people because you don't know who caused what, right? Did PlayStation push them to do the live service in the first place? And I'm basically saying it because if you give them freedom, if you give them freedom to pick what they want, well, people could say, well, Alex, they just chose to do like some stupid stuff. Why would you give them freedom again? But we don't know. We don't know like who actually caused them to do what, right? So I guess I'm just kind of going back to the well, and I'm going back to a very popular franchise. Again, kind of obvious reasons. They've done Golden Abyss. Now, that felt like a lifetime ago, right? So like the people that did that are probably not even there anymore. Again, different specialties and stuff, but they did do that. They were working potentially on Uncharted 1 1 remake as almost like a support team. So they have experience. They have experience doing something Uncharted, and seemingly they didn't like it, right? But at the same time, well, now you've done live service, and you hopefully didn't like that or whatever happened there. So you have to find something else, and you just tried to make a brand new thing after you just did make a brand new thing with Days Gone that you want to abandon. So this one, by the way, I think is far more complicated because they're just more messed up. So me personally, again, like Days Gone is one that I come to them and say, like, can you, like, is it really a big issue? Because we think if you did a Days Gone 2, it could be something. And I don't know, you have the sales of Days Gone, you got the movie, you got people still wanting it. I feel like it could be a legitimate thing. However, let's not discount how big Uncharted is, right? If they were to do an Uncharted 1 remake, not to make all of PlayStation teams into remake studios, by the way, but hey, it's an idea. Like, can you at least, again, it's another example of like quick rebound, right? Like, you want something, I have said this before with like Rocksteady, right? With Suicide Squad, make an Arkham Asylum remake. And I'm not saying that because we really, really need one, but it's something familiar. It's not too difficult. It's such a bankable thing, you know what I mean? And it's already there. You see, it's something that you can quickly turn around and do really well at. And I think, you know, Bluepoint, kind of going back to Bloodborne, is that really quick, you know, instant kind of payoff, right? Something like Bend is harder, right? Because if you do a Days Gone 2, that's massive. That might take 4, 5, 6 years, right? And a brand new Uncharted would also take 4, 5, 6 years. So I'm not necessarily saying that. I feel like they should maybe practice with something, right? And I don't know exactly what that would be, but I'm gonna, you know, again, throw out the idea of like something Uncharted. But I would prefer a Days Gone 2. So let me know what you guys think. What would you have these studios do? Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.